Hello and welcome to Propaganda Dropout, episode 14. My name is Michael Yeoman, and today we're going to be talking about priorities, talking about people deluding themselves, lying to themselves, talking about some very basic, fundamental, foundational things that you should be thinking about, hopefully often in your life, to make sure it's going the right direction, and yet I think a lot of people don't. And the reason I say that is because I have run into people in real life who seem to have a problem with this idea of setting priorities for your life. And I'll just go right into the story here, which is me and my wife have an acquaintance. They're a married couple, and she's fairly good friends with the wife, and I'm kind of acquaintances with the husband. I played board games with him and stuff, but I don't know that much about him, to be honest. And it has come out that the husband does not speak to his wife. And when I say does not speak to his wife, I mean literally there are not words being passed between the two. And apparently how it goes, and now this is all hearsay, so to be clear, I'm giving you all this information just to paint the picture of the kind of thing I'm talking about, not to dissect this particular instance. But from what I understand, the husband has a very stressful job, and when he comes home from work, he has told his wife that she is not allowed to talk to him, that he has to go into another room and play video games uninterrupted. Don't bother me, I'm gaming, for the entire rest of the day. And so they never talk. They both work outside of the house, so they don't talk during the workday. They don't talk after work because she's not allowed to. So they simply do not speak. All right? And this is what sort of first prompted this idea of wanting to talk about priorities, because first of all, let me just make clear for setting up this story that, or for the background of the story, that the wife is not happy with this arrangement. Just to be clear, she is not happy with not talking to her husband. Now, obviously, she should, ironically, talk to her husband about that. But again, this is not my intention. Here is not to give one-on-one therapy to these people who are not watching this anyway. I'm just trying to set the stage, because this guy I know would and does justify what he's doing here, right? He justifies the fact that he does not speak to his wife. Now, I don't even know if he would put it as bluntly as to say that he never speaks to his wife. That's the truth of the matter. I don't know if he's really stepped back and been like, I don't say anything to my wife. We do not talk to each other at all. But as far as playing video games after work for the entire all of his waking hours where he's not working, his justification would be simple, and this is where we get into priorities, okay? Because what he would say is, I play video games to relax, right? To de-stress from work. You see, this is how you justify your actions, is you call out a higher value, right? Because if I say to him, it seems by your actions that you are valuing video games higher than your wife, that sounds bad. So he will make a plea to a higher virtue. He will say, or a higher value. He will say, no. It's not that I value video games higher than my wife. I'm playing video games to de-stress. Okay? And it's like, okay. Why are you de-stressing? Right? Are you de-stressing just simply for the sake of it? Right? Because what you're claiming is you're not playing video games just for the sake of playing video games. So are you de-stressing just for the sake of de-stressing? In other words, do you value having zero stress in your life higher than communication with your wife, a good relationship with your family? And of course, if you do, that also sounds really bad, because it's impossible to have a zero stress life. And if that is his reasoning for doing it, it would explain why he spends all of his time trying to seek after the zero stress life, because he'll never get there. So then he would say, no. I'm not saying that I can't take any stress at all, and I'm not willing to put up with any stress at all for the sake of my wife. That's not what I'm saying. I'm de-stressing for the sake of my job, because it's a very stressful job. And so if I am going to work a job like this, I need this much time to de-stress. That's just the way it is. Now, there's an underlying, somebody may have spotted this, and if you have, good. I like how skeptical you are. You may have spotted the problem with that explanation, which is it implies that his wife is stressful, and that when he comes home from work, he needs to not be around his wife because he cannot de-stress around her. She is a stressful part of his life. Now, I'm going to leave that aside, but it's worth mentioning. But I'm going to leave that aside and just take it at face value that, okay, you are playing video games for the purpose of de-stressing. You are de-stressing for the purpose of working this job. So then we just ask again, right? This is sort of the practical way to work through what you prioritize in your life, what you are actually, not theoretically, but actually prioritizing in your life. You say, okay, so are you working the job for the sake of working the job? In other words, is the job just a blast, even though it's stressful? And that's why you do this, and you value the job more than your wife. And you'd say, of course not. No, I do it for the money. I need the money, and that's why I do this. And it's like, okay. And you can see how this might get tedious, but there's not many more steps left, I can assure you. Do you make money just for the sake of making money? Because if so, you're saying that you value money more than your wife. And he would say, eventually, he would come to the conclusion that, no. I make money for my wife. I am working in order to provide something for my family. And this is where the entire thing falls apart. Because he is saying that I am doing this thing, X, in order to increase the well-being of my family. But by doing X, I also decrease the well-being of my family. Now, I mean, it's complicated, right? Obviously, because if you could work a job where you spend 24/7 with your family, then that would be great, but that might not be possible, right? So, or if it is possible, it might be possible down the line, but not right now, or whatever. It's complicated, but my point is that if you start looking into this now, so now he's put it very clearly. Oh, I work for my family. It's like, okay, let's examine that, right? First of all, this person, and again, this person is just emblematic of many people. I'm not picking on this guy. This is not directed to him in particular or anything, but this person makes much more money than he needs to support his family. Way more. Partially, I know that because I live in the same area he does, and this is one of the cheapest places in the country. I know he has a nice house, and I know for a fact that he paid less than $200,000 for that house. Absolutely. And so I know his mortgage that he pays every month is nothing. He pays half as much as the cheapest rent some people can get in parts of the country. Well, actually way less than that, depending on what part of the country you're talking about, but very cheap. Food costs here, cheap. The cost of living just in general here is very, very cheap. So you cannot say then, and this is sort of a message to people out here who are like this, you cannot be making, if you make $50,000 a year at some job, and it costs you $50,000 a year to support your family, then you can rightfully say, I work this job to support my family. But if you make $100,000 a year, and it only costs you $50,000 a year to support your family, and there are other jobs that you could take that would allow you more time with your family, but would make less money, you are making a choice. You are putting the money before spending time with your family. It's as simple as that. Now, I'm not saying that is always 100% a bad thing to do. I mean, obviously, it doesn't sound great. But if you're saying like, okay, well, right now, me and my wife don't have any kids, and down the line we will, so I'm saving up money now so I can spend more time with the kids. Okay, that's completely very reasonable. or, you know, I have debts that I'm trying to pay off, or all sorts of reasons. Fine. But you have to understand where your priorities are. And when it comes to debts and when it comes to like spending time with your family later, then okay, you are putting your family first still. But if it's simply a matter of, I want more money, I want a more comfortable life, I want to be able to buy, for instance, in this case with this guy, a brand new truck that I don't need, that my wife, who is pregnant, can't even get into. She can't use it because the truck doesn't have any steps. And, you know, like, do you need to spend 40 or 50 or whatever $1,000 on this brand new truck? No. To support, is that supporting your family? No, in no conceivable way. And so that $50,000 or whatever that he made and spent on the truck is a sign that his priority is truck, then wife, or truck, then video games, stress, job, then wife, or what, maybe whatever. But wife is not at the top or even near the top. And I think it's really, really important to be able to look back at your life and realize, what am I spending time on? What am I spending money on? Why am I doing these things? Why are you working in the first place? If it's just for money, then be aware of the fact you probably don't start a family if your number one concern is money, right? This is the thing. When you start thinking like this, it isn't as if I'm not telling you what your priority should be. I mean, maybe I'm hinting a little bit that, like, maybe you should, you know, value your family, or, but if your priorities are money, then it's still better for you to know that, okay? Because if this guy's priority is just money, he wants to live a lavish life, he wants to make tons of money, and that is his number one priority, then he shouldn't have gotten married. He shouldn't have got his wife pregnant. He should, right? I mean, if that's his number one priority, then he's doing things that take away from that, right? I mean, maybe his number two priority is having a family, but you should know that at least. It's valuable to know that. I don't believe this man knows that. I don't believe that he's going out and saying, yeah, you know, family's cool and all, and I'm going to have a kid as like an afterthought, but I'm really about making that dosh. I'm really on that Sigma grind set, and I got married as just like a thing that is like a hobby. Like, I took up guitar, you know, I took up a wife and children as just a thing to put on my resume. You see what I'm saying? Like, that would be good to know. You'd find out that you're like a psychopath, like a sociopath, but it'd be good to know that. And I think nobody lays things out like this. Let me try and think of a different way to put it. All right. If you have $10,000, just for, or not 10, $100,000, just to give like a really simple numbers, right? Let's say you have $100,000 for the year that you're spending on your budget, right? And let's say you drive a lot for work, and let's say you set aside 10 grand for fuel costs for your car for the year, all right? 10 grand. And let's say that fuel cost is used to go to the grocery store, go to work, do things that are necessary to live. You could say, I am buying this fuel to do things that are necessary to live. You could even say, I'm buying this fuel to support my family, because the fuel allows me to go to work, which allows me to support my family. It allows me to buy groceries, which allows me to support my family. Okay, right. But if you spend $50,000 or $70,000 or all $100,000 on barrels of oil in your backyard, you cannot say, when someone asks you, why are you spending every last penny on crude oil? You cannot say, to support my family. I mean, unless you're running an oil business. But you see what I'm saying? That's nonsense. Maybe the first, $10,000 worth, okay, that was to support your family. The rest is not. And the rest shows that you were valuing oil over everything else. In the same way, if you're working a job that you could easily get a different one that is making it that you are sacrificing your family for, And it's not necessary. It's not like you're living paycheck to paycheck, or if you are living paycheck to paycheck, it's because you blow it all, not because you need to. Then you're valuing these things over your family. It's as simple as that. And I think this is going to sound strange. I think this is more of a problem for men than it is for women. The reason I say that is that men have a particular insecurity in general. I say this as a man. I say this is something that men have to deal with, which is the possibility that a woman will only want to be with you because you provide money. Women, on the other hand, have a different problem, which is they might have an insecurity about whether a man wants to be with her only for her body, right? And it's obviously a very difficult and completely separate issue, but similar. But for a man, it is seen in society as the number one thing you do is provide. And so, if that is the only thing you provide to a relationship, and you're very insecure about your wife leaving you if you don't do that, then you will spend all of your energy, all of your time making money. And then, ironically, drive your wife away because you spend no time with her. You haven't said a word to her since you got married. And, again, this is not to talk about this one guy, but this one guy, as far as I understand it, his parents are divorced. I'm going to take a guess and say that his parents probably didn't talk. And maybe his mom divorced his dad after his dad maybe lost his job or something. And that might make him really insecure about making enough money. But you need to realize where your priorities are. You're not going to get to where you want to be by chance. It doesn't happen that way. If you're in the middle of the ocean, okay, well, that's a terrible analogy. The currents actually could just take you to where you want to go. But if you're in the middle of the desert, you're stranded there, you're not going to get to where you want to go by just sitting there and basking in the sun. Not going to happen. You're also very unlikely to get there if you don't know where you're going and you just pick a random direction, right? You need to know where you are and you need to know where you're going, and you need to prioritize your life in order that you get to where you want to go. And I think it is not commonly talked about. We have a society in which the highest value is career success in a lot of ways. You could argue about that, but a very high value that's put above other things is career success. This is terrible for families, of course, especially when the wife also falls into this idea, falls into this trap of thinking career success is the highest value thing. But just even the husbands as well. It's not something people talk about, but if you're given a choice between I can make $50,000 a year and I work from home, maybe I have my own business, maybe it's a business that since I'm working from home and because it's my own business, my wife and my kids can be involved in it. They see me every day, all the time. I'm constantly, working with them and playing with them, and maybe even while I'm working, right? But still, I'm spending all this time with them. That's on one hand. Or on the other hand, you could make $1 million a year working some job where you never, ever see your family. Now, to be clear, I know some people are going to be like, well, I'll make $1 million and then save the money and then spend all my time with my family. Okay, this is a devil's bargain. Let's assume that you can't do that. Let's assume that it's you make tons of money and you don't see your family, or you make enough money to survive and you see your family all the time. If you're given that choice, most people pick money. Most people. But why? Why? Is that, I mean, do they actually have it clear in their heads that their priority is money and not family? If that's the case, why do they all have families? Why? Another example of this is I know someone who, it was a former friend of mine's father. And this father, Mormon guy, was a lawyer and spent no time with his family. I mean, like none. I mean, they didn't see him. They just didn't see him. And he was loaded. I mean, he may have actually been making $1 million a year. I don't know, but he was making six figures for sure. I mean, this guy was a very successful lawyer making lots of money, living very rich, expensive part of town, just loaded, right? And if you asked him why he did that, he would tell you that it was for his family. And the question to ask is, what family? What family are you talking about? Do you mean these strangers? Do you mean your son and daughter or whatever who you've like met twice in your life? You don't even know who these people are. And you're going to say that it's for them? How about you ask them? Here's the important thing. If you asked your son or your daughter or your wife, would you rather we go on expensive vacations and I drive a Lambo and we live in a fucking 8-story house that's half empty and we have land out in the country and we have all these things? You get a brand new Xbox, you can have a new gaming PC, we got big flat screen, we got everything you could ask for, and you never see me, or we're poor or middle class or poor, whatever, but we make it, and you can see me all the time. What do you think your wife and kids are gonna say? And this is the important thing. If your kids will say, for sure, unless they're like teenagers and they're jaded at this point because you've neglected them their entire lives, they're gonna say they'd rather spend time with you. There is no doubt in my mind. Zero doubt in my mind. Your wife, hopefully, if she loves you, will say that she'd rather spend time with you. But again, I think the reason that conversation does not happen is there are a lot of men who are afraid if they ask their wife that question, their wife will say, "Get back to work," which is atrocious, is evil, is greed, obviously. But hopefully you are with someone that you can trust enough that they're not going to have that response. And the difficult part is this, all right? First of all, you have to choose someone who is high enough value, who is virtuous enough to not do that. But second, you have to have some faith that they're not going to do that. Like, once you're married, you've got no choice. You kind of have to open up and tell your spouse your feelings, or else it's just going to fall apart. And that's the other part of this guy who doesn't talk to his wife. I mean, that's like the Grim Reaper standing in the background, right? He is not long for this world. His marriage, that is not long for this world if this is where we're at, if they are not talking. And this is a complicated topic, right? Because I know people could come back and they could say, well, Michael, I do work for my family, and sure, I make a little extra, but there's not another job that I could just go to make just a little bit late. It's not like I can go into my job and say, hey, can I just not work Fridays and you just don't pay me that day? You know, most people don't have that. Like, and it's not, you say it like it's so easy to just pick up a new job. Like, we're in one of the worst economies that America's ever seen. It's not as easy as all that. And it's like, yeah, no, I understand that. But are you trying? Have you tried? Are you looking for another job? Are you working, are you working your $100,000 a year job where you never see your family, but you're looking for a job where you can see your family more? Are you doing that? Or are you just using excuses and justifying everything you do with, it's for my family? No, I'm a good person. See, here's the thing. No one is going to sit there, for the most part, no one's going to sit there and say, I'm doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the money. I want money. I want to be rich. I want to live a rich lifestyle. My family means nothing to me. I don't even know why I had them. I don't know why I had my kids. I don't know why I got married. I just want money. Honestly, that was a mistake. I should have just acquired more money. No one's going to say that. They're going to justify it as if what they're doing is good. They're going to say, no. I slave away. I work like a dog for this family, and she won't even respect me enough to not say a word in my presence? She's the bad guy. I'm the good guy because I work. No, that's insane. Everything you do is a choice. You chose to marry this person. You chose to have kids. You chose to have this job. You chose to make this much money. You maybe chose to live in a place where you would have to make a certain amount of money to be able to survive, and you could have chosen to live somewhere cheaper. And you're choosing not to change any of these things. You're choosing not to try and find a different job. You're choosing not to try and whatever, any of this. You're making choices all the way along the way. I don't care what your justifications are. It's not, you can justify anything. I think this is actually an even more valuable lesson that maybe I can make a whole podcast about. But if you are good with words, I know this from experience because I think I'm good with words. I think I'm verbally skilled. Just hit the microphone, sorry. If you're good with words, you can justify anything. Anything. There is, especially to yourself. And when it comes to yourself, maybe you don't even need to be good with words. But in my experience, that's the people who tend to be able to justify things to themselves the most. You can justify anything. You can kill a man, murder him in cold blood, and you can come up with a reason that sounds good why you had to do it. Why there was no choice. I had no choice. It was for the great. And not only did I have no choice, but it was actually a good thing. That person was evil. What I did was a good thing. And this is what's going on here, is that people justify to themselves, no. I'm a good guy. I bring home the bacon. That is my value to this family. I'm the good guy. Meanwhile, their wife is like, are we even married anymore? I haven't seen you in like a month. And I laugh, but it's tragic, really. And I think this entire video is a message, a public service announcement, just to say to people that you need to look at what you are actually prioritizing. I don't care at all, and neither should you, at all, about your theories, about your justifications, about your reasoning for, oh, well, here's an example, right? An example for why I don't give two. I'm trying to keep this a little cleaner. I don't care at all about your justifications. I care about what you are actually doing. And the example is if somebody says, I'm a writer, and my number one priority in life is to write the great American novel. I want to write the greatest novel ever written, and that's my entire focus of my life. And you say to them, oh, well, what have you written? And they say, oh, nothing. Me? No, I've never written anything. Okay. Are you like in a writing class or something? Are you like what? Not writing. I don't even in a writing class you would write. What are you doing? What steps are you taking to get to writing? Are you a slave? Is there a reason why you can't write? Are you literate? Are you still learning to read? What? Please lay out to me why you're not writing anything. And they'd have justifications. They'd have reasons. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, the kids. Oh, the wife. Oh, the job. And fine. Maybe all those are valid. But it means it's not your number one priority. That's fine. I don't think writing should be a priority over your family, for instance. But it just means it's not your number one priority. I don't care what you say. It's meaningless. It's meaningless for you to say to me, it's my number one priority, and then spend no time on it. You're wrong. Maybe you think it's your number one priority, but you're wrong. You spend no time on it. You spend no energy on it. You spend no money on it. It's not your priority, right? In the same way, if you spend, let's say you need 8 hours of work a day to survive, right? And so we'll just look at the other 8 waking hours that you have in the day. let's say you spend a couple hours, an hour or two eating and like doing, showering, just regular life maintenance stuff. So let's say after all that, you have 5 hours left. If you spend all those 5 hours playing video games, you can say this, but you cannot truthfully say to me, well, my number one priority is my family. I mean, my number one priority is the well-being of my family. I care about my wife's feelings and well-being and how she's doing, and my kids, I want to make sure they're doing well, and that's why I spend zero time with them. That's why I don't see them, ever. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. And so you need to be objective enough to look at your day. And again, it is complicated because, okay, well, you're working 8 hours a day, but that supports your family. So how do you count that? Does that count as 8 hours of supporting your family? And so if you play video games for 7 hours and you support your family for 8, then like you're all good? Well, no. So you can't just use numbers, just pure, oh, well, this is greater than this. So that's my, but I don't think the problem is that people are confused on what their priorities are when they sit down and look at them. I think the problem is they just don't sit down and look at them. If you sit down and you say to yourself, here's what I spend every day, like here's what I spend my time on, you're going to see what your priorities are. And it's not going to be confusing. Maybe you can try and justify it to yourself. I'm sure you can. But it's going to be very clear if you sit down and do that, what your priorities are and what your priorities are not. And it's even simpler in this case, talking about this guy once again, because he spends no time. There's no justification that makes any sense for that, right? I could understand, very reasonable, if he's like, I have a very stressful job, and the job, I have no other skills. I'm working on getting other skills, but I have no other skills. It pays enough for me to survive. It's the only job I can do. It's super stressful. So when I come home from work, I play video games for an hour. I have this agreement with my wife. I've told her, hey, I'm going to be in a really bad mood when I come home. I need some time to unwind. It's nothing against you. I like being in your company, but I'm going to, I'm going to be rude or something. I'm just going to play some video games for an hour. Then we can go do whatever. That's pretty reasonable. But he spends zero time with his wife. None! Zero! I mean, another example is his wife is pregnant, and later this year, she's going to give birth, and he has a bunch of PTO saved up, and so she's asked him, breaking rules already by daring to talk to him, but she asked, hey, maybe you could use your PTO for once the baby's born so that, we can like be around the baby when it's first born. Like that, this is great. You have all this PTO. Like that's awesome. I might be kind of out of it right after the baby's born. So, this is great. Do you think you could maybe, how much PTO do you have? Do you think you could maybe use it for that? And he said, oh no, I don't have any PTO. She's like, what do you mean? I thought you had like a week or two, like saved up. He's like, oh no, I'm using that next month. Why? What? Huh? For what? I'm going hunting. Oh. Oh. So hunting, going deer hunting is more important than seeing your child. Okay. All right. And again, we're not talking about like I'm going deer hunting with my child or I need to deer hunt to be able to provide for my family so that they can eat. No. We're talking about like I have 2 weeks of PTO. I can spend it on whatever I want. I spend it on being alone in the woods, not with being with my family. Again, maybe there are situations where that's fine, but you cannot sit there and say my priority is my family. No. Your priority is yourself. Clearly, you are putting yourself way above your family, and it's not even close. You spend zero time with them. Well, with her, it's just the one person at this point, but it's not even close. And that's what I mean when I say, yes, this is complicated. It's complicated to work out. Like I cannot usually look at someone else's life and say your priorities are messed up, except when they're this messed up. And that's what, so yes, it's complicated, but that's not the problem here. The problem is not that it's complicated. The problem is that you don't even think about it. And I'm saying you as in this guy or like certain people in the audience. Maybe none of you have this problem, and so this is all just theoretical. But I think everyone has this problem to some extent. And I can certainly talk about times in my life where I had this problem. An example is me and my wife were running a farm. And the point of the farm, right, I have my priorities laid out where my number one priority is God, is getting to heaven, right? Living a holy life. But I also know that God put me on this planet to have a good family, to be the greatest husband and father that I can possibly be. And so family is obviously like right under that, and they're very intertwined. Children slightly above wife, simply because the children didn't choose to be here and the wife did. But it's pretty close, and obviously they're very intertwined. There's not many situations where your child's going to go above your wife. And if that does happen, it's probably because you messed something up. Like you have a bad relationship or something. And then everything underneath that goes back to those things, right? Why do I work my job? It's to support my family. And if my job is not accomplishing that, or I'm spending more time working than is necessary to support my family, that's meaningless. And that also informs then what job you get, right? Why do I want to have a farm and make my money selling eggs and meat and stuff? Because then I'll work at home and I'll always be around my family, and it's a job my family can help with. So I'm always that's the priority, right? I'm not there yet, but anyway, to get to like long story short, we had a farm, we were leasing land, we were running a farm. And it sort of, we made some mistakes, absolutely, in running this farm. That's why I don't have the farm now. I work a different job. But we were doing this and we started losing money. We started losing a lot of money, and we were trying very hard to keep it afloat. And because of that, I ended up getting a job driving a bus, like tours and stuff, and like football teams going, college football, going to play some other college, and old people going on vacation, that kind of stuff, like charter bus sort of stuff. And so then, see, this is it happens to everybody, and you have to be aware of this, but I had started doing the farming in order to spend more time with my family, in order to live a better life, in order to be healthier was another thing, be able to like work outside and eat good food and all this. And instead, now I was not seeing my wife very often at all because I was off working on these trips, like far away from home. I was not living a healthier life by any means. My sleep schedule was all messed up. I'm eating whatever I can find on the road. I'm sitting, just driving like all day, sometimes 10 hours straight. I mean, and so at that point, the farm was supposed to make our life better. And so the farm was supposed to be a much lower priority than our lives, which were higher. And that got flipped at a certain point. At a certain point, we were sacrificing our lives in order to make the farm better, instead of the other way around. And at a certain point, my wife said to me, like, hey, this is not good. We can't keep going with this, where like you're gone all the time, especially once the baby's here, obviously. And like this was sort of a stopgap solution to like make enough money to keep the farm going in the short term, but like the farm's falling apart, and then the farm had fallen apart, and like it's just not working, right? And so then it was like, yeah, you're right. I take a look at my priorities, and it's like, I'm not living according to my priorities. I'm not. I'm living completely opposite. The slave has become the master. The thing meant to support the life has become the slave of the life. So you take action. Like I immediately was like, okay, I'm going to see what other job I can try and get. I, took an online course on a certain type of job, and did it while I was at work because there was a lot of downtime at work. I just was not here. I was just, hundreds of miles away, but there was downtime. And so I got a job, and now I have a work from home job that pays better. And is it perfect? No, of course not. Like I still want the farming job long term, and we leased the farm from the wrong person. to keep it short. So now we're saving up money to buy our own land. Lesson learned. So yeah, like I still have these goals to make life better, but like I got my priorities straight. I want to spend more time with my family. Okay, I get rid of this job where I'm traveling all the time, and I get a job where I'm home all the time. Is it perfect? No, it's not the kind of job where I could see my kid like, all right, show me what you're doing on the computer. I mean, I don't want to get into what the job is, but yeah, it's you see how I've done it. We've all been there. There's nothing. Shouldn't say there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing shameful necessarily about being in the situation where you have found your priorities out of whack. You are not living according to your values. It happens. But you need to be able to sit back and honestly, it's a good, I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to be able to sit back and look at your priorities, know what they are, have them written down. And you need to be able to look at them and say, am I living according to this? And if I'm not, what can I do to change that? And I think it's a good practice to give some tips on this. I think it's a good practice to have this done regularly, right? Me and my wife, at least once a year. I mean, we haven't been married more than, but you know what I mean? We every once in a while, every few months or so, but we have, how do I say this? We have a commitment to do this at least once a year, but we end up doing it more than once a year. We look at our lives and say, are we living according to our values? What are our priorities, and are we living according to them? And your priorities can change, right? I mean, some big stuff isn't going to change. God, family, those things are going to be pretty high up, obviously. But maybe, you know, at a certain point in your life, you have travel somewhere in the middle of your priorities, and then later it gets really low or it gets higher or whatever. You know, there are things that can change, but you need to be able to assess, what are my priorities? Am I living according to them? Are we getting closer to the life we want or further away from it? And you need to be able to sit down and look at that objectively and just say, okay, I messed up. This is not, I'm going the wrong direction. It does not do you any favors to be prideful and not look at the mistake you've made. And I think this is another problem. Let's pick on this. Let's pick on this couple even more. So if they ever watch this, they'll hate me and refuse to play board games with me anymore. I'm joking. I think they'd take it in stride, but I don't know. Who knows? This is another example of that kind of thing. The wife, I don't want to make it seem like the husband is just like this terrible person and the wife is all in the clear. The wife works a job as well. And she works a job where she travels and she's not around at all. So she's currently planning that after she has her kid, she's going to put the kid in daycare after like a couple months or something. Like whenever maternity leave is over, that kid's going into daycare and being raised by strangers. That's terrible. That's atrocious. And the reasoning behind it, I believe, at least part of I think there's two main reasons that I see from and she's very, her and my wife talk a lot. So a lot of this information, you know, if it wasn't anonymous, I would not be sharing this. But it's a lot of this has been told directly. So this is not pure speculation, if that makes sense. I think part of it is that she's afraid to talk to her husband about it because her husband told her not to talk to him. So that's problem number one, obviously, that she basically wants to stay home with the kids, or at least has some desire to stay home with the kids as they have kids, but knows that her husband doesn't want that and is afraid to talk to him anyway, let alone about something that he disagrees with her on. That's problem number one. But problem number two is that she has a degree in this field and she makes good money. And so there's a sunk cost fallacy here. She thinks, well, I've put years of my life and tens of thousands of dollars of debt into this career path. If I leave now, that will all be for a waste. It'll all be wasted. It'll all be for nothing, right? Wrong. There's a couple ways in which you could take that to be wrong, but I think the most important one is simply this. It's already a waste. You already made the mistake. It's done. You made the mistake already. What do I mean by that? Okay. If my goal in life is to learn Japanese, let's say that's a goal I have. I want to learn Japanese, and that's a very high goal because maybe I want to work in Japanese or whatever. You know, I want to move to Japan. Maybe I've got a Japanese wife or something. I'm moving to, let's say, right? If I spend a year of my life learning Chinese, I don't get to sit back and say, well, I guess I should just keep going with Chinese. Because, I mean, even though my wife is Japanese and she doesn't understand a word I'm saying, and Chinese is not useful at all in Japan, I've already put like a year into it. I might as well just keep learning Chinese. No, you messed up. You learned the wrong language. I don't know how you made that mistake. They look similar, I guess, similar languages. You know, the writing, some of it looks similar, but it's like, no, you made a mistake. You need to now assess where you are and where you want to go, and realize that, like, oh, I messed up. I went the wrong way. I was supposed to be going east and I went west. Oh, what a mistake I made. Well, I need to turn around, right? You don't say, oh, well, I'm trying to get east and I've been going west. I'll just keep going west. I'll get there eventually. It's like, well, kind of. but no, you've made a mistake. Just realize that you made a mistake and then move past it. Everybody makes mistakes. It's not, you know, it's fine. It's just move on. If you now continue to put more energy into your career, when, you know, in the case of this woman, right? She wants a family. She wants the family to be a higher priority than her job. But right now, her job is a higher priority. And she's been living in a way that's put her job as a higher priority. You can't just keep living with the job as a higher priority and just like, well, you know, okay, well, it'll work itself out, right? Like, no, you made a mistake, fix it. You know, just turn around. You're going the wrong way, turn around. That should be simple, but people have this idea. They have this idea that, like, it's pride, is what it is. I cannot admit that I have made such a huge mistake that I need to now double back, that I need to go the other direction. It's like, no, dude, no. Everybody makes mistakes, and let me assure you, there are people who made much worse mistakes than you have. There are people who've wasted their entire lives, all right? Until you are dead, you are not the worst mistake maker of all time. Like, that's just a fact. There are people who have wasted their entire lives and have died never having their priorities straight. Never, ever actually doing what they want in their lives. Ever. And then they died. Until you're dead, you're doing better than that person because you have a chance to turn around. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. You, like, people compare themselves to their friends and their families. Like, oh, he looks so happy and successful at, 22 or well, nowadays no one's successful at 22, at 24. And, but I got out of college at 22 and then just did nothing for 2 years. I've been working at Starbucks. Oh no. It's like, no, you don't compare yourself to other people. Maybe they're miserable. You have no idea. You have no idea. Just realize where you are and turn it around. Deluding yourself is just going to make the problem worse, not better. That should be obvious, but everybody does it. So I just want to make that clear that straighten out your priorities, all right? Figure out what you want out of life, straighten that shit out, write it down, and have a regular time when you look at that and say, how are things going, right? For me and my wife, after our anniversary every year, we've only had one anniversary so far, to be clear, but, after our anniversary, we sit back and, how's the marriage going? How would you rate this? Give me a Yelp review real quick on our marriage. What could be improved? Food was great, but customer service is lacking, or whatever joke answer you could give here. But seriously, like what's good, what's bad, what can be improved? Are we heading in the right direction, or are we heading in the wrong direction? Let's fix this. You should do that with your life in general, and however you want to set that up. Have a crazy week-long meeting for your entire life once a year, or have little meetings about run your life a little bit like a business, but run it like a business that actually makes sense and not like a business where you roll the dice and hope for the best, if that makes sense. I don't know how stretched these analogies are getting, but that, I think, is where I will leave this, because I could rant about this for the rest of time, but I think hopefully my point has gotten across. The value of setting priorities and then assessing those priorities. If you don't, I'll make another point. If you don't assess your success, then you won't be successful. It's as simple as that. Like, except by accident. If you're doing something and it's not working to accomplish your goals, then you need to change it. But you can't change it until you recognize it. And to recognize it, you need to look. So look at your priorities. Do they match up with what you're actually doing? That's where I'm gonna stop with that one. I hope that was a good rant for everybody there, everybody here. I do have a couple of emails that I will read, but first I would just like in general to thank everybody who donates to this show, to this channel, to me. I don't believe there was any new donations since the last one because they normally come in monthly, basically. If I have missed you, though, send me an email and I will certainly make sure to thank you specifically. But thank you for everybody. Thank you for the support. As you may have noticed, there's a new YouTube channel for these podcasts. And it's a lot of people have moved over. It's been very good. We're at 99 subscribers on a brand new channel after like 2 weeks. That's really good. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's really good. And the monetary support is obviously even much more impressive than that. And so I ask, please, if you find value out of this, then give value back. Whatever you think it's worth. Attach a monetary value to it and give it back. If you think it's worth $1, give $1. If you think it's worth 1,000, give 1,000. I can't decide that. Whatever you feel it is worth. If it's not worth anything, leave. What are you doing? Don't waste your time. What are your priorities? What are your priorities here? Is your number one priority wasting your time? If not, then leave. If it's not worth anything to you, it should not even be on your priority list. Get out of here. Stop watching YouTube. Do something with your life. If it's valuable, though, please give some value back. And if you don't have money, I understand. If you don't have money, give back something, right? You know what I mean? Send it to somebody who you think might enjoy it. Write me an email with an interesting question that might be good to make one of these episodes. You will not believe how valuable that is. There are times where last week I didn't record an episode. Do you know why? It's not because I didn't have time. It's because I spent all day of the day that I had of free time trying to figure out what to make a podcast about. If somebody had asked me a question that really like stuck with me, would have been the easiest thing in the world. So that's valuable. I'm really thankful for Connor, who continues to send in good emails. But whatever you got, please send some value back. That's all I ask. So let us read some of the comments and emails that we got back. So the last episode of the podcast, actually before that, let me mention, I have not uploaded the previous episodes of the podcast onto the actual podcast like itself, just on YouTube. And that was a mistake, and I apologize for that. I kind of got so into making the new channel for YouTube and like that experiment that I just didn't upload the audio files to the podcast host. So my bad. You're going to see all of them come up like all at once, both the last episode and then the audio files for the last kind of like mini episodes that I've been doing as a part of this series of things your dad should have told you, just like answering little quick, half hour or less advice stuff. People like, oh, what do I do in this situation? Or am I the bad guy for doing this? A lot of like reading Reddit posts and 4chan posts and stuff, people who clearly need help just based on where they are. But just want to get that out of the way, mention that. Sorry about that, but they're coming. And on that note, somebody did actually respond to one of the question I answered from someone on 4chan advice. He said, I hope you realize that more than half of 4chan posts in 2023 are either bots or homosexuals pretending to be women and or straight men. Yeah, that's fair, and I understand that that's a real concern. But it doesn't mean that their questions can't be interesting. Even though AI is like really not good, you put a cone on top of a car and it can't drive anymore if it's driven by AI. They can still steal questions from people who are interesting. So, I get what you're saying. But yeah, I'm aware. I am aware. And we got a couple emails. I got a few other comments, but I don't know if it's anything that I'm going to read out. And I don't remember which ones I read out before. To be honest with you, I think I read out most of these, actually. We'll see. Although somebody said organized religion is an array of antibiotics. It won't make a healthy person healthier, but it will cure specific infections when applied correctly. that entire first sentence is very, so he's talking in regards to the last episode. I want my family to worship me. That sentence by itself is very strange. Okay, so he's saying that antibiotics won't make a healthy person healthier. That's true. Yeah, that's true. But it will cure specific infections when applied correctly. So he's saying that religion, organized religion specifically, will not improve a person who is already healthy. But who is already healthy? What do you mean, right? I mean, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. If you're saying that you're without sin, because we're not talking about like physical health here. We're talking about spiritual, moral health. So yeah, if you're morally healthy, then I guess you don't need organized religion, because you're our Lord and Savior, like that. You're not that. I can assure you that you are not this person without sin. So I don't know. Yeah, you're right. In theory, organized religion only cures a problem if you have a problem. But are you claiming to not have the problem? Are you claiming not to have sin? That's my question here. Like, okay, I guess I see your point, but I don't see how it applies to anyone. But, and he says Bob disagrees on some specific treatments. Maybe he had an allergic reaction to it. Now he wants to get rid of it all. You can disagree in private with specific doctrine without throwing all of organized religion away. A lot of points here that are, I don't know, debatable. Being able to disagree with a specific doctrine without throwing all organized religion away. Not really, unless that specific doctrine you believe in is that, like, how can you believe that the church is divinely inspired and that the devil will not prevail against it, and also believe that, well, in this one regard, the devil did prevail against it and they're teaching falsity? You can't really believe that. I mean, that's kind of dividing your mind into two. I mean, you can disagree with a specific doctrine of a different religion and therefore not throw away all religions. If that's what you mean, then like, yeah, of course. So I'm not sure, but thank you for the comment. And we got a couple emails, one of which is from, even though he has a funny name, I maybe shouldn't just say it, give his email address out. So I might cut that out. He says, I've been watching your content for over a year since I saw your video, Anime Makes You Transgender, which I think was a very good analysis. Was that what I titled that video? Whatever. It was something similar. I have my own theories about the whole transgender phenomenon, but I'll save that for now. In the meantime, dude, please give me your thoughts. It's a very interesting topic, but sorry for hitting the table there. In the meantime, I just want to convey my thanks for all the videos you make. Full disclosure, I'm an atheist/agnostic. However, I don't find any less value in your videos because of it. Thanks. I think too many people are quick to just turn down the lessons and morals of religion out of principle, even if the lessons are good. It is my belief that you don't need a religion system in order to have morals, and that you can create your own. However, it requires a certain willpower, self-awareness, and discipline, which most people really just don't have. Being so amoral, it is what has led to the degradation of society, so people are better off with religion, generally speaking. It is such a shame that this has to happen like this, where people tend to focus on the God aspect specifically, and not the benefits it can give to your life, such as a sense of purpose, morals, community, etc. There's so much. I really appreciate that this guy is getting valuable stuff out of these videos. I do. And I hope he continues to get valuable stuff out of it. But there's so much that he says here that is really not good, I would say. First of all, it's really amusing in a macabre or like not great way. To say macabre's not the right word there, but I don't know what is the right word. A really twisted way. To say, it's too bad that people focus on God, the person who created us. And, like, it's really too bad that they focus on the creator of everything and not on what can he do for me. like, yeah, he's all good, all powerful, all truth. Yeah, fine. But what can he do for me? What's in it for me? You said, I think it's a shame that people don't feel that way. I don't know if I would call it a shame that more people aren't so selfish as to ask God, what have you done for me lately, though? Oh yeah, you made the world like all the way back then, but like, what have you done for me lately? Like, I don't know if I would call that a shame, but okay, all right. And then he's saying the idea that you don't need a religious system in order to have morals. To some degree, I will agree, in that I will say natural law exists. Of course, that also comes from God, but you can be atheistic and still have the natural law given to you by God. It will just become twisted over time. And then at that point, I would say, no, you can't have morals without religion. I would side with Dostoevsky on this one and say that without God, all is permitted. Absolutely, because if you, again, this kind of ties into what we've been talking about today when it comes to justification. If you do not have an objective way to look at your life, then you can justify anything. Absolutely. I mean, it's easy. It's simple. And you are putting yourself in a situation where you are saying you can create your own religious system. Like, I mean, you said that word for word. You can create your own. And if you're creating your own religious system, what is stopping you from just saying good is bad and bad is good? What is stopping you from justifying every single action you make in your life? Now, to be clear, there are people who are religious who justify their bad actions as well, but at least they have an objective standard to compare it to, right? I can justify why it was okay for me to murder someone, right? But if I actually believe in God and I believe that murder is wrong, that it's in the Ten Commandments that thou shalt not murder, then I have to compare myself to the objective standard, regardless of what justifications I have, if I truly believe. If I don't truly believe, then I'll just delude myself. But if I believe, then I have to face the hard truth of whether or not what I did was actually wrong objectively. Not, and like things can be varying levels of like, oh, well, I was drunk or whatever. But you see what I'm saying? Like, you still have to objectively look at like, is what I did evil or not? But if you're making your own morals, you can just choose. And he's saying that it requires a certain willpower, self-awareness, and discipline. Maybe that's what he means. He's like, oh, well, you have to make these morals and then be able to hold yourself accountable to them. And it's like, well, yeah, okay. But first of all, I don't think you should walk away with this thinking that you're special for having that self-discipline, because religion doesn't work without that either. He's setting it up in a way that, like, if you have willpower and self-awareness and discipline, then you don't need religion. It's like, no. With religion, you need those things too, because you can still just justify your actions. You see what I'm saying? It's like somebody saying like, oh, well, if you're strong enough to lift that couch by yourself, you don't need a second person, right? It's like, no, it's not like that at all. Like, we're talking about a couch that's not able to be lifted without a second person. So I don't know if that analogy lands, but you see what I'm saying? Like religion doesn't work without discipline either, right? Like, and sure, that discipline and that willpower is given to you by God as grace, but like, if you believe in God, then that's the case for atheists as well. Their lacking of it it's complicated, but what I'm saying is it doesn't follow. It doesn't follow that, oh, if I have no willpower, I can just have religion instead. Well, no, no, not at all. That's not going to work for you. You'll actually just be more miserable. This is something that a lot of people don't realize about religion, is if you're religious, it doesn't make you happier, just period, right? Like, you actually have to live according to it, and that's tougher than not living according to it. So if you're religious and you're not at least trying to meet some standard, you're just going to be more miserable. If you want to be happy, drink. Although you won't be happy in the long term, obviously. But like, this is not, take opium if you want, but in the long term you'll be happier. Anyway, yeah, I really am against, again, this is kind of what I talked about in the last episode about it's Luciferian. You're making yourself God and worshiping yourself. You're saying that you are the source of good and evil and you are the final judge of good and evil, not our Lord, but you judge good and evil. If you live that way, of course, you can't have any standards about anybody, which is dangerous. I don't mean this just in like, oh, well, you can't be a judge because how could you judge anyone? You would judge according to the laws or whatever. But what I mean is you could not protect yourself, because there is always the possibility of justification for anything anyone does. And so you can easily be blinded by yourself or by others, right? If someone steals from me, I can sit back and say what they did was wrong. But if you can always, how's a better way to say that? Basically, if you're always able to justify someone's actions, then eventually it will happen. If you give yourself that option, it will happen when things get tough. You need to not give yourself that option, especially when it comes to your own actions, because, you know, you seem well-spoken here, so I know you can justify stuff to yourself very easily. And you would be a stronger man than I if you don't do that, if you don't justify things to yourself. But yeah, I would just be careful about what you're saying here. Obviously, what I'm saying comes from a religious perspective, which you don't believe, so who knows how much of this you'll take, but you do seem to enjoy these videos, so, you know. Thanks for the comment. I do enjoy it. He also said, your content is great and informative. I make sure to tune into any new video that pops out, and I'm glad to watch every one. I'm writing this mostly because I don't sign on to YouTube ever, so I can't leave a comment, unfortunately. Best wishes, B. P.S. Noticed the Proto Man shirt in the recent video. Rock on. Yeah, dude, Proto Man was great. Me and my wife, sometime last year, went all the way to Tennessee to see him in concert. It was very, very cool. But yeah, I'm a big fan. But anyway, thank you for the comment. I would just, or for the email, just like be careful about the whole, like, I'm better than people, therefore I don't need religion, therefore I'll make my own religion. That's not, it's not good, but there's not much more to say about it, because I feel like the last episode I kind of talked about somebody who did that. So I don't know if there's more to say right now that wouldn't be retreading old ground. But if you have questions about, you know, what I'm saying here, ask me, and maybe there's a follow-up here. And then we got another email, again, from Connor. Thank you, Connor, for the regular correspondence. He says, hey, Michael. Over the past couple weeks or so since my last email, you've been putting out some awesome videos. Please keep up the great work. I am trying. Not as often as Today's the busiest part of my work, like, schedule, if that makes sense. And I'm also trying to save up money before the baby gets here. So I've been very busy, but I try and get these out. If I don't get something out in the month, I have failed. So I make sure to at least get that, and I like to get more than that, obviously, every other week or so. He says, your analysis in the video, I Want My Family to Worship Me, of my former friends, Bob and Charles, was very eye-opening. It's weird how difficult it is to see the bad in people you have very fond memories of. I will say I understand that completely. I had long-term friends, I mean years and years and years and years friends, who were terrible people, like really, really bad people. And I did not recognize that for a very long time. So I get it. Like, I understand it takes an outside perspective. And that's how I finally realized these people were such bad people, was an outside perspective. And from the outside perspective, it's like, these people are terrible. Why do you spend time with them? And it's like, oh, yikes. Actually, the realization took a lot longer than just oh, yikes, right away. It took a while. But I've been there. I understand exactly what you're talking about. Yes, it is tough. That's, I think, part of the value I hope that I'm bringing to, like, these videos is just an outside perspective. Like, when someone asks me a question, I can bring an outside perspective. That's a very valuable thing, to have somebody who can bring a level-headed outside perspective, especially if it's a perspective that's truthful, that you're not going to get from society, because we live in a society that doesn't really like truth or even the pursuit of truth. So I hope that's something I'm providing. But he goes on. When you brought up the New Age ideologies and pagan points about Bob, it all made sense. He did seem to bring up pagan, Norse, and Celtic ideas a lot, and how they aligned with other ideologies like witchcraft and astrology. I love this email that he sent. I read through it earlier. Makes me feel like a genius, right? Because in that last episode, if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. I think it was really good. I talk about his friend Bob and how he has, like, a New Age ideology. And I determined that based off of, like, one sentence or two sentences that Connor wrote about him, in which he made no reference to anything that you would directly associate with New Age. And then Connor comes back and says, you know what? He did talk a lot about witchcraft and astrology. Makes me feel like a genius, dude. I called that. Like, I mean, I was spot on. I was right on with my diagnosis there. So that feels really good. Thanks. Until listening to you talk about Bob, I always thought he was just theorizing or explaining something new he had learned about, but now I realize he was probably discussing these ideas in a way of probing me for whether or not I'd agree or approve of them. In hindsight, he seems to have been going down this sort of path for a while. Your notes on Charles were mind-blowing. So, Bob was the guy, I'm trying to remember what I said exactly, because these are fake names, and I don't remember, they're not real people that are, like, solid in my brain. But Bob was the guy who said, like, organized religion is fine, but it's like a crutch. And Charles was the guy who said, organized religion, I don't want it getting in the way of what I tell my family to do. So, he says, your notes on Charles were mind-blowing. The main issue I was stuck on with Charles was why I felt so deeply sad hearing his story. When I heard you speak about him, I realized that I feel terrible for the grave mistake he made for his family. His selfishness has brought him to drive his family from the truth. Truth. I completely, that was just me misspeaking. He didn't misspell it, to be clear. I completely agree with you. You're relating his mindset to Luciferianism. You were also half correct on his family upbringing. Yes, get another one. Put that on the scoreboard. His parents did stay together, but they fought each other constantly, according to him, and beat him. Charles's description of his childhood was always very tumultuous. As I've said, I don't interact with either of these people. My priority is my family, and I don't believe I was capable of changing either Bob or Charles's paths. Yeah, actually, I considered today making a video about this sort of topic, which I'm going to just write down here right now, which is you can't change anyone. I mean, you can pray for them. You can be a good influence for them from afar, like somebody that they look at and like, I wish I had that. How did they get there? I will try and follow those steps. But you cannot change anyone. And trying to is just manipulation. I think I talked a little bit about that last time, but it could maybe be a video of its own. I tried by sharing my thoughts as often as they asked for them and demonstrating my faith. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. But like you said, at a certain point, you can't have these people around you. You do what you can, and then you move on, right? I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you, and I am so thankful for your thoughts. Anytime, and I'm very thankful that you brought up this question, and hopefully this is helping other people as well. Near the end of the episode, you spoke about how you're interested in making a video dismantling the propaganda around fertility. I am. Yes, absolutely. The problem is, there are videos that I make that take preparation insofar as like getting my thoughts together. There are other videos that are just kind of rants, and I don't even need to do that necessarily. And then there are videos that take like real research. Not like, oh, I've been reading about this recently and I've researched this in the past, and now let me give you my thoughts on this. But rather like I need to sit down and get like research together. And I think fertility, depending on how I do the video, falls into that category, which just obviously takes more time because doing research takes time. Now, there are other ways I could go about it. Like, I think more than scientific research, which I'd want to have some of, there's also just anecdotal stuff that's worked for me, stuff that's worked for people I know, common sense or like Lindy stuff, if you will. That was a word that was going around for a while. I don't know if anyone still uses it. But Lindy was the idea of it's something that's old, that is good because it's old and it's been done for a long time. So that's kind of proven that it's good, if I remember the word correctly. So like, you know, if for 2,000 years people have been drinking raw milk, then that's Lindy. You see what I'm saying? I don't remember, though, exactly. I might be defining the word wrong. Someone tell me if I am. But so I could go more in that direction, which would take less research, but still I'd want to do justice to the topic and get a lot of information together, and it just takes more time. So it's in the works. It's on the back burner, but I don't know how soon it will come. Probably not until at least after this month, because this month is very busy. Probably not until the baby's born, and then I'll have a baby. We'll see. We'll see. You already know I'm interested in that. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely on the list. I also remember you speaking in another video a long time ago, maybe over a year, when you were eating a raw meat diet. Still doing so. My wife and I know absolutely nothing about raw meat diets and would really enjoy hearing you speak on the topic. I think this goes in line with Propaganda Dropout's main goal because of all the propaganda involved in the food industry. Maybe you could first go over the basic propaganda in the food industry and then go into the raw meat diet. Yeah, I thought about that. There's a couple ways I could approach it. Let me know what you think. One is, like you said, I could, and everybody let me know what you think, is what I'm saying, not just Connor here. I've thought about, I could do something like that, talk about like propaganda in the food industry, but like I feel like a lot of that's very well covered. But let me know if maybe you feel differently. Like I feel like some of the basic stuff, like seed oils, for instance, is so well covered that I'm not going to do a better job than the average person. Not the average person, but the average person who's already done it. But I could be wrong. If you feel differently, let me know. So I could do something like that and then move on to like raw meat. I've also just thought of making a video on like, here's my story, like my health journey, where I've come from. And that would kind of show, it's anecdotal, but it would give you like, here's what I did that improved things I had. Like, for instance, I had terrible migraines, which I've realized were most likely caused by vaccine injury after receiving the HPV vaccine as a teenager. Why they made me get that vaccine when I didn't have sex until I was married is a point of contention. And why I allowed them to do so, I didn't have a lot of self-esteem at that point. Or knowledge, to be clear. But that led to migraines, and then eating this diet has allowed me to not have migraines, at least much, much less often. As an example, and just sort of going through my health journey like that, and like what's worked for me, and what's worked for people I know, and what's, I've thought about doing a video like that. I don't know how interested people are in it, so, let me know. But yeah, definitely something I've thought about. And he said, I also acquired and read The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr. It was absolutely mind-blowing. My wife still thinks we need to verify that some vaccines aren't good before she accepts the no vaccine argument. To be clear, she hasn't read the book and has just heard my synopsis of each chapter that I found pertinent. We agreed that we have plenty of time to continue researching to solidify a decision. What would you say are the most important points to make towards not vaccinating? Okay, so obviously this is a very controversial thing to be saying. YouTube's not going to like what I'm saying here, but it's not going to stop me. And there's a lot to it, so I'm, giving like broad points. Number one, all right, none, I repeat, none of these vaccines have been tested. We don't know if they work. We know that they cause injuries because we have all these reports of the injuries that they've caused. We don't know that they work. You might say, Michael, how do we not know that they work? Aren't there all these diseases that have been wiped out because of vaccines? And it's like, no, there's not. Look into some of them. The most common that people look into, for instance, is polio. And you see that polio had mostly been eradicated already before the vaccine was introduced. And in fact, when the vaccine was first introduced, it caused a bunch of people to get polio. Then you might notice that after the polio vaccine came into existence, they changed the definition of polio to, I don't remember exactly how it is. I'd have to reread again to be transparent here, but I believe it was spinal meningitis. It was like polio now is 0, but spinal meningitis has come up. Interesting. Or the most recent example, obviously, is like, wow, corona was really, really prevalent. It's weird how we had no flu, though. Really, really weird how we had no flu. It just seems like they changed the names of diseases so that they can move the narrative one way or the other. Oh, we want to make this disease look really dangerous, and we're not really worried about that other one. So we'll name this one that one, and we'll just switch them, and we'll call everything that would have been this, we'll call that. Or the opposite, we want to make it look like our vaccine really worked really effectively, so we're just going to say that disease doesn't exist anymore, we're going to call it something else, right? Like, that's part of it. But basically, so no, we don't have proof that, like, measles is another good example where measles had dropped off dramatically and then the vaccine was invented. It was not like there's tons of measles, then they invent the vaccine, then it drops off. No. Now, does that prove it doesn't work? No. It just, you cannot use that as evidence that they work. And the other thing the more pertinent, the more important thing for them we don't know that they work and that they haven't been tested, is that there has never been a double-blind placebo study of any vaccine. Ever. They will do studies, but they will do insane things. Like, for instance, I think it was the MMR vaccine, but I don't know for sure. No, I think it was the HPV vaccine, actually. I believe for the HPV vaccine, it was Merck who did the test. Because it's Gardasil, which is made by Merck, pharmaceutical company. And their method of, if I'm not mixing this up with another vaccine, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, their method of testing the vaccine was they had the experimental group, the test group, there's another word for it, but the test group that they gave the vaccine, and then they had the control group that they injected with aluminum. Aluminum is not a control. You cannot, and so then when the people in the test group got extremely sick, they got paralyzed or they got brain dead or something, they could look at the control group and be like, well, the same number of people got paralyzed in the control group, basically, so that just evens itself out and we don't have to report that. So that's what I'm saying. There's never been an actual study where what you want to do is you want to test, look at people who got the vaccine, look at people who didn't get anything. Put water in them or something, saline or something that we know is not going to have a reaction, whatever it is, and look at the two. And also, you should have a study. What do you call it? Interventional study. No, not an interventional study. Whatever the case, you should have a study looking at people. What are the health outcomes for people who've gotten all their vaccines on schedule, and those who haven't gotten any, and take a look. No one's done that. No one will do that because they would very quickly see that the people who don't get the vaccines are healthier in every way. So it seems. And no, I can't point to a study that shows that they are healthier. I can't, because they won't do those studies. The studies that study vaccines are funded by the people who make the vaccines. But even in those studies, they can't hide all of it. But no, I can't look at a study that shows vaccine versus unvaccine, for all vaccines or something, because they just don't do it, of course, because that would go against their bottom line, right? It reminds me of the EU wanted to pass some laws about piracy, internet piracy. This seems like a very tangential, but you'll see what I'm talking about. They wanted to pass some laws about piracy, and so they had a study that they were putting together to show how much money piracy was costing the people who made things. This was around the time when Game of Thrones was really big, and so that piracy was kind of in the news because it was the most pirated thing at the time, was Game of Thrones. And they did these studies, and the EU found that actually it had no effect on how much money the people who made it made. And in fact, it may have even had the opposite effect, because the people who pirated the media were the most likely to buy merchandise and the DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff, which they made better margins on and made them more money in general. So actually, piracy did not have that negative effect that they expected to see. So what did the EU do? They canceled the study. And that's just how it is. If you have a vested interest in your study, you're not going to have a real study, right? That's just not how it goes. And so every single child who is injected with one of these vaccines is a test subject. They're a guinea pig. We're testing these things on them. And you look at actual control groups, that being pockets of people who haven't gotten vaccines or the Amish or something, and you see that they're way healthier. They don't have allergies. They don't get ear infections. They're not constantly sick all the time. They don't have autoimmune problems. They don't get migraines. They don't get almost any, some of them, very small percentages, do get some of these specific things, but the percentages are way less. And some of them, they just don't happen. Autoimmune diseases just seem to be non-existent in the Amish, for instance, or autism. Non-existent among the Amish, but at least nearly non-existent, and seems to be non-existent among other groups who don't get vaccinated. So is that 100% these things are purely bad just off the logic that I gave just now? No, but would you inject something you know nothing about into your child's arm just because, who knows, it might be good, it might be bad, flip a coin? No, of course you wouldn't. And if there's good reason to believe that it's bad, but not really any good reason to believe it's good. There's lots of at least anecdotal evidence for it being bad, not really evidence for being good. You can make arguments about it's easier to see the negative effects than the positive effects. But Yeah, that's you say what's the number one, the most important points? That's my number one most important point is like there's just no evidence that it works. There's none. There is no evidence that it works. It's just as simple as that. They haven't done, and you can say, oh well, they've done studies, and so there is evidence. I don't call any of that evidence. Like that's not science. If it's not double-blind placebo study, then I don't want it. I'm not looking at that. If I'm gonna inject something into my child's arm or into my arm, I'm not going to do it because, like, I don't know, it's kind of wishy-washy studies we have here. Like, no, I want proof. And the fact that the reason they don't get the proof isn't because it's impossible, but because it goes against their interests, tells me all I need to know. Tells me all I need to know, you know? That's my number one point. Anyway, if you want a vaccine episode, I guess we could do that. That is where this channel dies. On that note, actually, I really am truly sorry for not posting this on the podcast platform at the same time as the videos, because I want to encourage everyone here, watch this video on YouTube, that's fine, but be subscribed to this show somewhere else, okay? Do not rely on YouTube by any means, okay? I would prefer if you check on the podcast and say, oh, there's a new episode, but I want to see the video, so I'm going to watch it on YouTube. Do that. Don't go to YouTube first. Do you see what I'm saying? I encourage that heavily because, I mean, let's just be clear. I mean, the stuff I talk about, I might not be long for this world, the YouTube world. So if you want to continue seeing this, make sure you have a means to do so. I will try to provide the best means to do so. If anyone has experience with alternative video platforms, because I don't really use a lot of alternative video platforms. Like I watch, for instance, James Corbett sometimes, and he's on like Rumble and Odyssey and stuff like that. But I just watch it on his website, or I download the podcast more often, actually. So I don't know much about, like I know enough about podcasts, and I'm trying to work and get it more like independent, what I'm doing here. I just don't have a lot of the technical skill, or know-how, rather. But if anyone knows anything about like Rumble, Odyssey, any of those other alternatives, and which ones are actually good, let me know, because I might start mirroring these there as well. But anyway, just something I want to mention. So Connor says, thank you again. God bless you and your family. Thanks. Thank you, Connor. And with that, we will stop there. It's been kind of a long one, which is not bad. I think that's good. I'm going to listen back to this and see if I actually like it and think this is valuable. And if not, as I've said before, you won't hear it. But let me know what you think. Please leave comments, send emails. It makes these so much easier to make when there's just a good question that I can like, that's a question I can rant about. Boom, doing that. Instead of like, I got to think about this. I got to work this out. How do I frame this? It's so much easier to frame it when the question does the framing. You know what I'm saying? So please send in emails, comments. I really appreciate it. And send in value, whatever you think this was worth. You can see in the links below. You send through PayPal or cryptocurrency or whatever. If you send through cryptocurrency or something, send me an email so I know you sent it, because I don't check that every day, you know, so I can thank you or at least know that it's there. At some point, like a few months ago, somebody sent me like hundreds of dollars of, what was it? Ethereum to my Ethereum wallet, and I had no idea. That sat there for months, like, because I don't expect to be getting, you know, not most people will just send money through like Patreon or PayPal. That's what they prefer, and that's fine, you know. But so if you send through one of those means, just send me an email and let me know. I'd appreciate it, and then I can thank you for it. So, all right, thank you for listening. Hopefully this has been useful, entertaining, some sort of value you've gotten out of this. Hopefully, let me know. Leave some comments. Let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. God bless. Bye-bye.